Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. We are live. This is about 8 o'clock Thursday, May 17th. I've got a few different things here and no one is around yet, so I'm just going to hold off a second before I get into my main discussion, which is going to be what knife features really matter and how much do they matter? All right, I've got a bunch of different knives here representing a whole lot of different mechanisms. Hey, man, how's it going? Riley, it looks like. Yeah, so I'm going to talk about knife features and how much they really matter or don't matter. And I've got a few different knives here trying to represent various opening mechanisms and blade shapes and handle shapes and things like that. And I want to talk a little bit about how many of these things really make a big difference. T. Willie, how's it going, buddy? Thanks for joining us. There's only a few people in, so I'm going to repeat myself a few times at the beginning here. One thing I will do is take some time to answer questions as we move along after I get past my initial discussion. Then I'll just kind of open up the floor for questions. That'll probably be after 10 minutes or so, depending on how long-winded I am. Keep in mind, I am a preacher, so I can be pretty long-winded. Johnny, what's going on? Good to see you. To repeat it again, I'm going to talk about knife features and which ones really matter. I don't know, nothing metallic. Yeah, nice. Nothing else matters, right? So let's go ahead and get into this just a little bit. Nasty Renegade, what's going on, man? I have a bunch of different knives. Let me move some of this stuff out of the way. So this guy's got a thumb stud. This guy's got a flipper. What have I got? Oh, opening hole. Oh, how about this guy? We've got two knives here that have nail nicks. This one and where's the rake? There we go. There's the other one. Oh, look at this guy. Assisted. I love the Cold Steel Swift, by the way. This thing should be way more popular than it is. I think that's all of them. I guess it's always nice to have a Chris Reeve knife around, so we'll throw that one out there as well. But though what I kind of wanted to demonstrate there very quickly is that I was able to pretty quickly and pretty easily open all of those knives. Do I have my preferences about them? Yes, I do. But I think if we're realistic, we really have to ask how big of a difference do our preferences make? Paul, how's it going, man? I don't know if you've been in on one of these live streams before, so glad to see you. For those of you who don't know, Paul's been a long-time viewer. Hey, how's it going, Florin Voss? Paul's been a long-time viewer ever since the channel was probably 500 subscribers or something. So thanks a lot, Paul, for checking in. I'll hope to hear your opinion or maybe some questions when we get to that point in the video. I want to just show you that I've got all of these knives open. Sure, if you're one of those guys that likes to fidget with your knife, maybe that makes a bit of a difference. Okay, this one is going to be a little less fidgety because once it's open, you know, it's going to fly open with that spring assist. By the way, this is the Swift 1. You can see there's no locking mechanism on there. I have no idea why they did that with the second gen. Back to closing. All right, and I think you'll notice that it's going to be about the same thing, okay? All of these knives, I'm going to be able to close pretty quickly and easily. Even this one, which is totally backwards, just so you can be reminded of this if you didn't see the review. So this guy opens two-handed. You got a nail nick. And then the liner lock, let's see if I can get this to focus on it. The liner lock is actually backwards. So this is a really good example of what I'm talking about when I say, does it really matter? And so as a reviewer, that is something I have to think about because there are some things that I'm inclined to hate. I also thought of a song. Which song did you think of? Jack Farm Boy. The first song that was referenced was Nothing Else Matters. I should have had some Metallica playing in the background, but I'd probably get flagged or something for copyright if I did that. So, but if you're noticing, all of these knives, I'm having no issues opening or closing them. You know, you could argue that some of them are more fun or less fun than others, but guess what? The reality is, does the opening mechanism really matter all that much? Yeah, probably not. I have preferences for sure, and I don't like a knife that's super uncomfortable, and I don't like a knife that's super inconvenient, but overall, pretty well every one of these knives. I think you've noticed this at this point. Every one of these knives, by the way, this is going to be in a bit of an aside. I did have a viewer who was kind enough. I don't know if the focus works different when you're live, but this does not want to focus very well. Anyway, I did have a viewer who was kind enough to send me this Tangram Santa Fe. And overall, guys, I've been pretty impressed with it. I will do a full review, but you know, it flicks open really nicely. It's comfortable in hand. I like the blade shape. It seems to be holding an edge moderately well. And maybe that brings me to another point of discussion, which is blade steel. How much does it matter what kind of blade steel is in here? So we've got S35VN represented. Actually, all three of these have S35VN. All four of these have S35VN. We've got 14C28N over here. We've got CTS XHP right here, which is probably my favorite steel on the table right now. Oh yeah, better pull out the GSO. We've got 20CV, which again is a great steel right here. And so guys, I don't want to be too negative. I'm going to bring these flashlights in a second too. But, you know, if I need to just cut something, or if it's my everyday carry knife, blade steel. Yeah, I know. We all like good blade steel, guys. You know, let's be honest. But the reality is, S35 is your favorite. The reality is, for most of us, if someone secretly switched out your S35 VN blade with 14C28N, how long would it take you to notice, right? It might take you, it might take me, if I'm honest, it might take me a month, right? Because one, I'm switching through knives fairly often, so I don't sharpen them that much, okay? Number two, this knife, here's a good example. This knife is fairly dull. It's new to me and I haven't had time to sharpen it yet. And, you know, it won't shave hair, for example. But the other day I had to cut open a package and it worked just fine. Okay. So although I like to have a very sharp blade, I think all of us can admit that, you know, blade steel is nice to have, but it's certainly not necessary. Actually, it was interesting just to see you guys weigh in with your favorite steel. I saw some S35s, S35s, some CTS XHPs, lots of good steels out there. 14C28N is my favorite budget steel. I think we've talked about that quite a bit. And what I feel about 8CR, yeah, I don't know. You mean 8CR13 MOV? 13CR. Oh yeah, I think that's what you mean. 8CR13 MOV is not a great steel, okay? It's not my favorite. But again, for most guys, it's going to do the job. I will say, the reason I like CTS XHP is because it seems to almost sharpen easier than it wears, if that makes any kind of sense, right? So CTS XHP, at least in my experience, cold steel CTS XHP has held an edge pretty well. But when it gets dull and you go to sharpen it, you go to start sharpening it, and in your mind you're thinking like, this is a good steel. It's going to be a little tough to sharpen, and it's fine. And you're like, what's going on here? There's no problem. Yeah, it's really, really good. Yeah, me too. So what have we covered so far? We've covered opening mechanisms. All right. We've got thumb studs here. We've got flipper mechanisms. We've got assisted and unassisted. We've got nail nicks. We've got just about everything you could think of. We've even got a fixed blade over here. And the reality is, if I need to get it open to cut something, generally speaking, I have no problem getting it open to cut something, no matter what the opening mechanism really is. So, you know, think about this, you know, as a reviewer, I've got to stop and go, all right, how hard should I really be on a particular opening mechanism? Because the reality is, if I can open it and cut stuff when I need to, what more is it fair to ask for, right? I suppose some comfort and ergonomics and speed and stuff like that is kind of important. And I kind of try to deal with those things in a review. But honestly, if the knife opens when I want it to, that's really all I'm looking for. Then in terms of a lock, you know, yes, is a triad lock the strongest one here on the table? I would say yes. The only thing stronger than this is going to be this, right? But does it really matter if I have a lock that's that strong? All right, here's a knife that I would say, you know, take a look at this liner lock. It's not super thick, okay? And if you were to, put this in a vise and start hanging weights off it, like cold steel is prone to do, I doubt it would hold up a ton of weight. All right. Should I, as a reviewer, take marks off for that when I'm doing the review? I've got to say no, because the lock, the purpose of a knife lock is usually not to hold as much weight as you can possibly hold. And if they were, they would probably be engineered a little differently. Or if you really needed a knife that could never close on you and you never have to worry about it, this would be the lock to go with, right? The no lock, or the fixed blade. So does a locking mechanism really matter? My argument is not all that much. And here's one that I'm really guilty of, guys. Let's see if I can find a good example of it. Well, this is kind of an example. So if you take a look at these two liner locks, the Rat is a little thicker. Do I have one even thicker? Let me see. Guess that's the best I can do. I do have one that's thinner. So let's take a look at this rake. There we go. So take a look at that. Fairly thin liner, right? Compared to this, is this going to be as strong? Is it going to be as robust? Probably not. Does it matter? No. Honestly, in my cutting tasks, I never do this, okay? I'm cutting this way. In fact, probably if all of these were slip joints, I don't know that in my daily use I would actually notice. All right. So now that we've covered opening mechanism, we've covered closing. Variety is all I care about. Locking mechanism, the end blade size, as long as it cuts. Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. 39. Nice. I've actually seriously thought about this. I thought about just taking like a month and carrying nothing but the Manley Companion. Yeah, my sentiments exactly. I'm not concerned that the rake is not as strong. By the way, guys, this thing is gorgeous. I don't know. This may be my favorite knife design that I've seen so far this year. I really, really like the design of this knife. There are a couple little issues that I have with it, nothing major. Of course, one of them is the fact that, I don't love this opening mechanism, although as I've been saying, I can open it when I need to, and I don't love the bead blasted blade, but I absolutely love this design. I'm blown away by this design. So let's get back to what we're talking about. So far, we've covered the... Please don't say Manley Companion. It disturbs me. I don't mind having a deep... Ah, no. All right. Well, one of those... Oh, there we go. I don't mind having a deep carry on my PM2. Oh, yeah. Are you thinking of the... Yeah, me neither. I don't usually wear my suit into the woods. But yeah, let's talk about that for a minute. Pocket clips. I wish I had a Kershaw here. Here's a good example. Everything here is Manley. Thank you. Yes. So this pocket clip, I really like it. It's deep carry. It's very thoughtful. Notice how the screws are nice and flush, so it goes in and out of pocket really well. Let's see if I can find an example of one that's, okay, here's one that's not maybe so well thought up. Yes, Lynch clips are awesome. Casey, by the way, if you've never dealt with Casey, it's almost worth buying a clip from him, even if you don't have a Spyderco, just because he's such an awesome guy. Yeah, I really, really like Casey. When I first got into knives, I put Lynch clips on all of my Spydercos. Now I just don't have as many Spydercos, but the ones I have, I would really like to put Lynch clips on them. Anyway, here is a clip that's not that awesome. All right. But when I put it in my pocket, it clips to my pocket and stays where it is. So again, I have to ask, what more could I want? MXG gear clips are awesome too. Johnny5, thanks for the comment. I have not messed with the MX5 clips, but I'm happy to take your word for it. If you say they're awesome, then there you go, guys. Yeah, so there are lots of awesome clips out there. And again, when I'm messing around with a knife and when I'm getting ready for a review, I've got to remind myself. Looks like Sid from the Ice Age movie. This one? Okay, fair enough. I've got to kind of remind myself, like, how much does this matter? If it goes in pocket and stays where it's put, like, who really cares about the rest? I know a good example is Zero Tolerance. They often get a hard time for putting those bent over clips on their knives. I'm trying to think of a good example. The Zero 452, which is a great knife, cool knife, great action, by the way. But on the 0452, it feels like this big, expensive, classy knife, and then it's got this bent over clip. And guys complain about it, and I'm like, I don't know. In my review of the knife, I was like, well, The clip holds it in my pocket. Do you like clips with strong retention or we? Well, I like them to have perfect retention, if that makes any sense. All of these, and actually all of these have really, really nice clips. They're just pretty well all exactly right. None of them tear my pocket to pieces. None of them are hard to get in and out of pocket. I do have some knives. Here's the move I hate. And I bet you every one of you can identify with this. How many of you done this? You go to put a knife in your pocket and you got to do this little move. You put your finger there and try to get it over that ridge in your pocket. I don't like that. Okay. So if that helps to answer your question, but as long as I don't have to do that, if it's a little stiffer and I have to, work at it a little more, that's fine. I'm happy with that. So now we've covered all those different things. The most important thing about a clip is it carries in the, yeah. Yeah, you probably are the only one on earth who doesn't like the wire clip. Even I like those wire clips. I'm not in love with it, and I don't have any knives with it that I keep very long because they are always on smaller knives, which, you guys know I'm not a big fan of the smaller stuff. And since Spyderco always puts, since Spyderco always puts those clips on the small knives, I don't have any. The only one I'm interested in that I might pick up at some point for the collection, I won't not buy it for that. Yeah, good point. There's a lot of features like that where it's not my favorite thing, but it's not going to put me off. But yeah, the wire clips, I like them, but I don't have very many knives that have them. I just don't really get it. Okay, so now that we've covered, yeah, Manix 2 lightweight, great knife. Okay, so we've covered pocket clips, we've covered deployment method, we've covered lock type. What about blade shape? Can we talk about blade shape a little bit? So let's open up some of these knives. Actually, these do have very similar blade shapes. This one is like way different. Let's see, a little more belly here. Here's one with very little belly, like tons of straight edge. What else have we got? I guess the Spyderco is going to be similar. Chris Reeve. Okay, so now I've got a bunch of knives. Oh, I haven't got, yeah, I got close enough to a Wharncliffe. So, wow, that was a fail. So there's a Wharncliffe style blade. How much difference does blade shape actually make, guys, in everyday use? Blade shape makes a big difference if you're skinning an animal, for example. But I don't know about most of you guys. I don't skin a lot of animals with my folding knife. Okay. Normally, if I'm going hunting, I'm almost always going to carry, actually, no, I am always going to carry a fixed blade, and it's going to be a fixed blade that has a decent amount of belly. I don't know. This one would probably do the job, but even this guy, this is the Survive Knives GSO, which I absolutely love, by the way. This wouldn't be ideal, maybe. If this tip was a little higher up and had a little more belly, I might like that a bit better. So again, my point is, for EDC, does it matter which one of these blades you have in your pocket? Probably not, right? What job can you think of that you're going to get out your knife and go, oh man, I was going to cut this envelope open, but because this knife has this belly, I can't do it, right? Well, of course you can. And that's, most of these are going to be just fine for like 98% of whatever you're trying to do. I don't do a lot of, yeah, the blade on the Konig Arius is fantastic, no question. Yeah, the Cordo blade is very, very impressive, especially as you say after that. You've done a turkey with a PM2 and a bear and a deer with a Gerber 06. Wow, well done. Yeah, the hollow grind on those Ariuses is fantastic, no question. The Konig Arius is an epically good knife anyway. So yeah, now you've got me totally off on a tangent. Let's get back to what we're talking about here. Blade shape. This is probably the most obnoxious one that I've got on the table. You've got a hollow grind with a recurve here, and then you've got this long flat grind. And guess what? I've carried this as my EDC quite a bit. I actually really like this knife. I picked it up because it was such a good price, and it really was. And was kind of thinking, well, I'll review it for the channel. Maybe I'll sell it after. I'm not really sure what's going to happen. And it turned out that I really, really liked it. So I'm not really in any, I'm not really in any rush to, yeah, I just buy bits of them from the supermarket. Exactly. So I'm not in any rush to sell this knife. I'm not sure that it'll be always in my permanent collection, but it turns out I like it way more than I thought. Florin, yeah, here's my take on Kaisers, and that is um, buy them after they've been out for a while and the price comes up really low, or buy them on mass drop or something like that. I've never had to mess with their customer service, but I could believe that, especially, being a Chinese company. And it's hard just with that distance and stuff. So anyway, yeah, customer service. So back to the blade shape stuff. Even this blade shape, which I know you guys are right with me when I say it's a little obnoxious. I've done all kinds of cutting tasks with this, and guess what? It did all the cutting that I needed it to do. Like, there was no time where I was like, oh man, I'm gonna have to put this away and go get a different knife. It just didn't happen. All right. Now there are some very specific tasks, like, I don't know, skinning a fish, or, chopping carrots or something like that, where I would be like, yeah, I've got to get a special knife for this job, right? The T1, yeah, Ryan, the Kaiser T1 is amazing, and I really want to try a Lancer too. It's on my short list. I'm hoping that they come up in a mass drop or something. In fact, I've requested that as a drop. So anyone who's watching this, go on mass drop and request a Lancer as a drop so that they'll get enough feedback to maybe do it. Here's my point. As an EDC knife, for an EDC knife, I should say, most blade shapes are not going to matter all that much. Now, here's where you might have a bit of an issue. A really thick grind or a really weird grind or something like that, maybe it'll give you a hard time in sharpening, all right? And that could be a problem. I know a lot of you guys look at this one and go, yeah, I don't like this because of the recurve. It's hard to sharpen. I just sharpened this on a Spyderco Sharpmaker, and it's like the easiest thing in the world. So that's my solution to recurves, is just a Sharpmaker. It was, oh my goodness. Anyway, I missed the Smoky Mountain Knife Works sale on the Lancer 2, which I would like to get my hands on, actually. I really like that design. Anyway, if someone's got one out there and wants to trade for one of these, maybe I'd be willing to do that. Just kidding. Wait till I'll put a message out there when I want to get rid of these. All right, so we're talking about knife features. Now we've covered lock type, we've covered deployment method, we've covered blade shape. What about handle material? I've got a few different handle materials here. My son said hi. Hey man, how's it going, Johnny 5? My son is a little bit jealous because he's not in this video. It's too close to his bedtime, but here's a good example. This is a plastic blade. I mean, a plastic handle. And this is about the only one that I'm sort of so-so on. Otherwise, guess what? I don't really care. Carbon fiber or titanium. I definitely like carbon fiber or titanium. But, if it's G10, if it's titanium and G10, if it's, as long as if it's FRN, if it's, even this cheap carbon fiber, this is a little bit slick, but the shape of the handle kind of makes up for the slickness of it. Again, does it really, really matter in terms of, can I use this knife for cutting stuff when I want it to? Yeah, not really. Micarta, again, is great. Now, there may be special considerations that, and that's, I'm thinking more in the realm of EDC guys as we're having this conversation. So yeah, if you're saying, man, when it's wet, or when I'm running my Navy SEAL missions and I've got to sneak up behind somebody and take out their jugular vein, I've got to have micarta so it doesn't slip in my hands. Well, okay, right? I don't normally do that with my knives. So if you really need the micarta because otherwise you could die, sure. Knife Crazy, what's going on? Thanks for joining us. Can't stand aluminum handles. All right, here's my take on aluminum handles. Anything goes as long as it's not slippery. Yeah, I kind of feel you. Aluminum handles can be slippery. My biggest thing about aluminum is when they put the anodized aluminum, that powdered coating that gets on them, it wears so fast, right? It really does sort of. Don't worry, weight is the next thing on my list, Ryan. I'm going to talk about weight in a second. But the only thing I dislike about aluminum handles is that they show wear even worse than titanium, which is kind of frustrating. And of course, G10 is probably the best in terms of, just wears like iron. Now, coming back to, finally, let's get to the weight. All right. You guys have heard me say this all the time, and I'm going to tell you this, and I honestly believe it. I think sometimes reviewers begin to have too much influence on the knife world. And there was a time when I first got into knives, especially, that everybody was making knives and it seemed like they were purposely trying to meet the specifications that Nut and Fancy liked, right? And it got really annoying because Nut and Fancy is like, if it's over 4 ounces, I'm gonna get too tired just carrying around in my pocket. And like he really had this hang up on had to be under 4 ounces. And so a lot of knives really work to get under that 4 ounce mark and sacrifice things to get there. And I was like, who cares if the stupid knife is 4 ounces or not? I carry knives, my Curtis F3 is like almost 7 ounces. My Ziba is over 7 ounces. This guy is just under 5 ounces. This is probably around 5 ounces. I don't know. What else have I got here? This is a tank of a knife, but it's in a different category, so I won't even bother. But really, to me, anything between, I don't know, about 3 and 7.5 ounces, I could care less about the weight. And that's a pretty big range. Now, of course, I'm always going to try to tell you guys handle design and balance supersedes weight. And yeah, I will say I do pay a little bit of attention to balance. You will get some knives that feel really back heavy or really blade heavy. I will say this. I'm more opposed to a knife that's really blade heavy than I'm opposed to a knife that's really butt heavy. If it's, if it's sort of heavy back here at the back, that's not so bad. If it's really forward heavy, that for some reason that bothers me, although it shouldn't. I can't really think of a reason why it should other than just the way it feels in hand. And so as a reviewer, I probably wouldn't say anything about it. And I rarely mention balance anyway when I'm talking. There you go. Tighten the belt and carry whatever you want. Yeah, that's right. And by the way, there are some situations like this knife is an extreme feather light. It's ridiculous how light this knife is for the size of blade that you're getting. And so there are times where you want something really slim and really light, and it's nice to have a couple of options like that in your collection, but I don't feel any need to take points away from a knife because it's not heavy enough. Okay, we've talked about blade, we've talked about pocket clip, we've talked about handle material. I think handle shape probably matters most. I'm trying to think of things that don't matter as much as we sometimes make them matter. We've talked about blade steel, we've talked about deployment method, and we've essentially said that none of these things matter as much as sometimes reviewers like me, okay, make them out to. Now, we've pretty well covered most of what I wanted to get through here. I will say the things that I do find matter are thinness behind the edge. All right. I think that makes a big difference. Comfort in hand and grip in hand. If it's really uncomfortable, there are a lot of hot spots. Yeah, that obviously matters. How thick the blade is may matter depending on what you're doing. So, here's a blade from the Inkosi that I love, and it's designed to be really heavy duty. Yeah, locking mechanism doesn't matter. Again, you're right. We had that discussion. I pointed out the triad lock is probably the strongest one here, but who really cares? So Inkosi blade I love the Inkosi blade because it's just a really, really good balance between toughness and durability and utility and slicing power. It really is nearly a perfectly balanced blade. But do I need that? Here's a fairly thin blade, and here's, you could break the tip off this so easily. And I don't think it's in focus. There we go. That's probably focused there. So here's a very thin blade. Is that the end of the world? Should I be saying, this knife is no good and you shouldn't buy it because the blade stock is too thin? No. Okay. Because it really depends on what you're using the knife for. And again, most of us are not likely to be using our blades for really heavy duty stuff. And if we are, then we ought to be using a fixed blade, like I said before. By the way, I am still in total honeymoon stage with this knife. So the reason I keep getting it out is because I absolutely love this knife. Let me put it back down over there. But here's another good example, a blade like this. This is not a heavy duty blade. Once again, Wharncliffe, thin blade stock, fairly thin behind the edge, which I do like, very fine point. You could break this off very easily. Out of all the blades, you like the Inkosi the best? Yeah, I would say the Inkosi's on my short list of favorites. I think the Swift is also would be up there. But I'm pretty happy with most of these blades. I think all of these, if I have reviewed them already, then they probably got pretty good reviews. And if I haven't reviewed them yet, then yeah, most of these are going to be fairly positive. Are you thinking of this one here, Florin? This is the Rake. Let me check the model number. P865. Yeah, I know. Only knife guys know what you mean by it. Yeah, people watching this who were not knife guys would be like, "What on earth are you even talking about?" Sorry guys, I keep knocking the tripod there. Okay, so that's my take. There are some things that do matter, but man, there are a lot of things that we make a big fuss over that I don't think matter as much as we pretend that they do. The other thing is flashlights, same deal. So there's lots of different flashlights with lots of different operating mechanisms. And I've watched flashlight reviews where the reviewer just like tease off on a light because he doesn't like the way that it functions. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking to myself, you know, if that was the only light you had, guess what? Use it for a few weeks and you're going to get used to it. And it's going to be very intuitive after you've used it all the time for a month or a few weeks. So again, I don't think the mechanism matters so much. Now, maybe accessibility. Okay, here's a light where these back ridges, I understand what they're here for, but they can make it, you know, it can be a little tough to depress that button. So that can be a bit of an issue. But otherwise, you know, in terms of how many times you have to push the button and what turns on this function and what turns on that function, I think once you get used to a light, it doesn't really matter. The average person who isn't collecting flashlights and isn't reviewing gear could care less. He's going to pick the light that has the brightness levels that he wants, that's comfortable to carry, and you're good to go. Florin, you always want to start reviewing. You should, man. Even if you look, there are reviewers from all over the world that, you know, some I can't watch because I can hardly understand them, and some they're speaking a totally different language anyway. So doesn't really matter. Make reviews in your native language if that's what makes you comfortable. Yeah, that's the other thing. A lot of things will grow on you. Okay. Now, guys, I've had my say. I've been talking for like half an hour. I should have shut up 15 minutes ago. Let's go ahead and let you guys, I did promise that we'd have a question and answer. So if people have got some questions, by the way, you already have asked a few. I think you asked me about what steel I liked the best and something else. But anyway, yeah, if you got questions, go ahead and let her rip. We'll spend, you know, a little bit of time here. I've got to get going in about 10-15 minutes, but otherwise let's take some time for some Q&A. And while we're talking about that, while you guys are coming up with questions, thoughts on Grayman knives. They're right in my alley and I should really like them, okay? But for some reason, they just don't speak to me. Like, I like big heavy duty knives that are highly functional and really well made. Like, that's exactly the kind of thing that I'm into. But for some reason, I just can't get excited about Grayman knives. It's not their fault. Maybe if I got one in hand. How many knives do I have? It ranges. I think right now it's probably closer to 70. And really, my collection normally stays around 50. And as it approaches 100, then I'll be like, okay, we got to back off and get rid of some. So I think I'm sitting around 70 right now. And so it probably won't go much higher than that. Thoughts on Benchmade as a company? I like Benchmade. I feel like their models, for me anyway, are either a total hit or a total miss. Like, I love the Crooked River. I love the Freak. I love the, what's the knife I was just trying to think of and now I'm forget it. The Boost. Okay, I really like the Boost as well. I've had lots of Benchmades that I really liked, but the ones that I don't like, I'm just like, dude, just throw this thing in the garbage. I absolutely just despise it. The Benchmade Bug Out. Okay, this is totally subjective, but the Benchmade Bug Out, I had it, I reviewed it. It's a good knife, okay? The quality is absolutely there. Usefulness is there. To me, it didn't feel substantial enough in hand to give me any confidence. There's something to me about a knife when I'm holding it in hand and getting ready to do a job with it. Does it feel like I can, can I approach this job with confidence and feel like I'm ready for anything with this knife? And the Benchmade Bug Out, well, I think it probably would handle just about anything I could throw at it. It just didn't feel like it could. All right. And So because of that, that's really my only complaint about the bug out. What knife do you get most excited about to grab? Oh man, probably my Curtis F3. Every single day I pick that knife up and fondle it a little bit. I just love everything about it. I love the size. I love the feel in hand. I love the blade grind. That is just a fantastic knife. I knew it. If you had to cut hundreds of boxes with a ZT, which ZT would it be? Probably the 0770 or the 0562 or even the 0560, because I will say this, out of all the ZTs I've had, and I've had a ton of them, the fixed blade in the sheath, this is a Survive Knives GSO 4.0. This is like the most epic fixed blade I have ever experienced. I just mentioned though that I'm still a little overly in love with this knife. So, but yeah, I love this knife. And for those of you who've been on GSO's books for ages, or Survive Knives books for ages, and have yet to get a knife, keep waiting. It's totally, totally worth it. Yep, I love the Valhalla. And yeah, RWL 34 is a good steel. I had a Rehab Valkyrie and I got rid of it, and I still have moments where I'm like, as a firefighter preacher, outside of the workplace, my interests are I like to hunt. I like to lift. That's about my most regularly engaged in hobby is definitely working out. I work out about 5 times a week, and I focus on sort of heavy lifts, power lift style form. All right. And I do, I find a lot of fun in that. I like the progressive nature of it, where I can lift just a little more next week than I lifted this week. So that's my biggest hobby outside of knives. I like to go hunting. I like some sports. I play a little bit of hockey. Otherwise, and then doing stuff with the kids. And doing stuff with the kids takes up more time than any of the hobbies that I have, and I think it should. But when I get time to myself, yeah, there's some other things I like to do. I do strum away at the guitar once in a while too. I guess I should list that as a hobby. So that's a lot of stuff. And honestly, I just do the stuff that I enjoy, and I try not to get overly obsessed with it. So those are the hobbies. I've got to come back to one other point though. I was asked which ZT, if I had to cut up a bunch of cardboard. The one I didn't get to mention was the 0560. Okay. The 0560 it fits so well in hand that it just feels like it was meant to be in your hand. And I got rid of mine a while back, and I still kind of regret it. And I think I will be adding a 0560 to the collection at some point, because very few knives I've ever used have felt as natural in hand as the 0560. Someone else just asked a question. Hold on. How do I get the comments to come back up? Sorry. I'm banging into the tripod again. Anyway, how do I convince my fiance to how do I convince my fiance to buy me a knife? I don't know, man. My wife has bought me buy her a Porsche. Yeah, there you go. That'll do it. I think, what, if she knows that's something you're interested in, don't push her on it. I think she'll come up with it all on her own. I think a number of you know a while back that I talked about my Riot knives Torrent. That is one of my favorite knives in existence, certainly my favorite Riot. And my wife, yeah, 5 years is too long. Marry her. Yeah, but my wife bought me my Riot Torrent, and I love that knife, guys. It is such an awesome knife. Every time I pick it up, I think of her. And so best edge angle to sharpen an EDC knife at depends on the steel. A nice, hard, reliable steel. I'd like to go a little steeper, probably 15 degrees per side. A softer steel, one that's prone to rolling, or even a steel that's chippy. D2, for example, has a bit of a reputation when it's really well hardened. It can be just a little bit chippy. And so a shallower angle on D2 is probably going to be better. But the nice thing about the super steels is the thing that makes them super is you can usually get a really steep edge on there, and and that's where they really shine. Now, I have to say that nice. There you go. Yeah, and that's the thing. Now, I will say, guys, I do have one knife. I'm not going to say which one it is because I'd rather no one knows. But I do have one knife that my wife bought me, and I liked it at the time. And now I'm not in love with it anymore, and I'd kind of like to sell it, but I just never will because she bought it for me. That's obviously not the Riot. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, talking about edge angles. My Now, having said that, those nice super steels with that crazy steep angle, I've actually come to like more and more a convex edge. So that's what is on the Inkosi. And when I got this one, rather than take it away from that, rather than most guys get any Chris Reeve knife, they come with a convex edge and they put them on, whatever sharpener of choice they use and put a regular V grind on it. I have kept the convex edge on this, and I really like a convex edge. It tends to hold. I guess you could argue that it won't get as hair popping sharp, although I can get them very sharp. Maybe you couldn't get them as hair popping sharp as a regular V grind. So a convex is like this rather than like this. But the stability and the longevity you get out of a convex grind, to me, is a worthwhile trade-off. Rub it in, guys. Oh man. Is my PM2 still factory edge? No. This is the S35V Pair 2. I've had this knife for years. And I try to take it easy on all my knives. So when I sharpen a knife, I try to remove the least amount of material possible. I think a Sebenza, I would just sharpen it. I would set your angle at, because remember, if you have any Chris Reeve knife, to my knowledge, now certainly the Sebenza, the 25, and the Inkosi, they all come with a convex edge. So that means the edge is rounded down to the tip like this rather than a straight V grind, which means essentially you've got to pick an angle, and probably somewhere around, your standard sharp maker, 40 degrees, 20 degrees per side. You can probably go to 17 degrees per side. I wouldn't go 15 degrees per side with a Chris Reeve knife, because they don't harden their steel as much. Okay, so I think they stop around 58 Rockwell, and they think that's the best for users. I tend to disagree. I'd like to see them make it harder. But I would pick, 20 degrees and take it right there. Stepped on my shirt. Oh, nice. Wicked Edge. I have an Edge Pro Apex. I have a Sharp Maker, and I have a Work Sharp by Ken Onion. The Work Sharp is only really for tools and machetes and stuff like that. For nicer blades, I always use the Edge Pro, and for regular touch-ups and stuff, I use the Sharp Maker. Wow, guys, can you hear that little guy crying in the background? Sorry about that. It looks like I'm going to have to cut this off. I've heard only good things about the Wicked Edge, though. Let me add that one point. Thanks for checking in, guys. Thanks for all your questions. It was a fun conversation. Even your comments were well informed, and it was a lot of fun doing this. We'll talk to you soon.